All right, folks, unless I hear an objection from the crowd here, I'm going to go ahead and gavel us in. It's just after 6. Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the April 3, 2024 meeting of the Citizens Advisory Committee of the Hillsborough Transportation Planning Organization. My name is Rick Fernandez, Chair of the committee, and as is our normal practice, I'm going to work around the room from my left and ask everyone to identify themselves and their appointing authority. Again, I'm Rick Fernandez. I'm the at-large Hispanic rep. Dana?
Dana Lazarus, appointed by City Councilwoman Lynn Hurtak.
Jim Davison from New Tampa, appointed by Commissioner Lostel.
Joseph Citro, appointed by Porter County Commissioner Harry Cohen.
Chris Gonzalez, member at large, Hispanic representative.
Bill Ulachino, under 30 seat at large.
Matt Sink, appointed by Alan Clendenin.
Fred James at large, represent the West Chase area.
Would you care to identify yourself, Stephen?
Yeah, Stephen Hollenkamp, City of Plant City.
Sarah Capler, TPO staff.
And we have some committee members, at least 2 that I see up on the wall who are attending virtually. Ed, would you please start us off?
Yeah, this is Ed Mrzewski. I was appointed by the Expressway Authority, and I'm calling in from a hospital room in Orlando.
Oh, I'm sorry. I hope is it your, well, never mind. I hope you're all right. Or someone you love is all right.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yeah, good evening. I'm Bill Roberts. I was appointed by the Hillsborough Aviation Authority.
Do you have anybody else online?
Mike Decker.
Yeah, Mike Decker. Commissioner Owen, I apologize. I did RSVP. I was going to be there tonight, but as I'm walking out the door, that roof started leaking a little bit, so I apologize. I'm not there in person.
Okay, and Mike. Anybody else?
Artie Fryer, Transportation Disadvantage Coordinating.
Okay. Anybody else?
Josh
Carolyn.
Frank, Hillsborough County School Board.
I'm sorry, who was that? Is that
Josh.
Josh?
Josh
Okay.
Frank, Hillsborough County School Board.
Did I hear Carolyn?
Yes, Carolyn Brown, appointed by Commissioner Myers. Sorry for my voice.
Anyone else?
I'm scrolling through real quick. Let me take a look. I think that's all of our committee members.
And we have Christina Costa walking in the door. Give Christina a moment to settle in. Sure. Hi, Christine.
Apologies, Mr. Chair and everybody else.
Well, you're just in time to identify yourself and your appointing authority, if you would, please.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Christina Costa and I'm appointed by City Council member Guido Maniscalco.
Thank you. Gail, would you please call the roll and tee us up for declaration of quorum?
Yes, sir. Rick Fernandez.
Here.
Bill Roberts.
Here virtually.
Jim Davison.
Here.
Carolyn Brown.
Here.
Hoyt Prindle, I believe, is excused. Michael Decker.
Present.
Joseph Citro.
I'm here.
Aya Yassin. Stephen Hollenkamp.
Present.
Christina Costa.
Present.
Dana Lazarus.
Here.
Matt Sink.
Present.
Artie Fryer.
Present.
Don Skelton. Ed Mrzewski.
Here virtually.
Ilya Lashnov.
Here.
Terrence Trott is also excused. Joshua Frank.
Here online.
Chris Vella. Sarah Thomas. Greg James.
Here.
Chris Gonzalez.
Here.
We do have an in-person quorum.
All right, Gail, thank you very much. That takes us to line item 4 on our agenda. Public comment is Anyone in the room for public comment? Doesn't look like. Anyone online? No hands up? Okay.
I'm not seeing anybody.
All right, takes us to chair's report. First of all, those of you who've been around for a while, are well aware of this. For those who are newer, we are entering what I lovingly refer to as the tip season. May and June. May is the month where we usually are getting a preview of the Transportation Improvement Program for the coming year and for the coming 5 years, actually. And then in June, we are actually presented with the series of documents and tables that we are asked to review and litigate and ultimately vote upon. So that process will begin in May. I've asked staff, and really didn't even need to ask them, they're already on autopilot for this sort of thing. But I asked them to please make sure that they're prepared to give us a general primer on the TIP process next month, and also provide us with a preview of the TIP documents. So we'll begin to get familiarized with that process. It's one of the most important things we do every year. It's very involved. And for those of you who are going to be going through it for the first time, all I can say is welcome to our party. Okay, number 2. Somebody not on
I
mute.
just joined and I hit my mute button now, so I think I'll hear. Sorry about that feedback. Oh, it takes a second.
Very good. Okay, in keeping with the Dana Lazarus rule, I am going to report now on the actions of the TPO board that align with actions of the CAC. The TPO board approved 2 items that were approved by the CAC previously. The multimodal counts report, which was actually part of their consent agenda, although it did draw a fair amount of discussion and comment for a consent agenda item. And the TIP amendment on the I-4 truck parking facility. Both of those were passed, again, one by consent, the other by actual vote. And those were both items that we litigated and recommended for approval at our last meeting. Also, I don't think this happened before our last meeting. I was advised that Hodges William has submitted his resignation. Apparently, he has another opportunity that would be conflicting with this CAC work. So he submitted his resignation, and we now have another seat to fill. I believe he was the Planning Commission appointee, if I recall correctly. So Hodges, if you're out there somewhere listening to us, we'll miss you. I'm very sorry to hear that you decided to step off, but I understand. The attendance report is attached to your agenda items. Just want to note, and this is really peeling off of something Josh Frank said at our last meeting. We have what, assuming this is still accurate and current, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and with Hodges 6 vacant spots on our committee. So I certainly encourage the staff to continue their great work at recruiting, and don't forget, it's not all on staff. If you know anybody that might be interested in working with us on this committee, you may encourage them to move forward with an application. So we're 6 short, 5 before, 6 now with Hodges gone. Also, I noted we have, I think it's 2 members that are now hitting, I guess with this meeting, their 4th absence in a row. So under our bylaws, they are subject to removal. I don't know if there's been any action taken to reach out to them and see if they're still interested, but 1 member at large, Ms. Thomas, and Natasha Sherwood, the Hart representative. Please.
Thomas did resign, and we have talked with Hart to see about what they would like to do with that position.
Okay, well, hopefully what they'd like to do is fill it. It'd be great to have a Hart rep here. But in any event, I just want to make sure everybody is aware. Yes, Steve?
I see Mr. Willits, Justin Willits from Hart is in our meeting.
Yes, he's here as a presenter.
I see. Okay, I thought you might have comment on
Yeah, we reached out to the representative and we'll get back to the TPO to get that seat filled.
Okay, very cool. Are you sitting on the TPO board as a member now, Justin?
I'm an alternate for Scott Drainville, the CEO of Hart.
Okay, all right, cool. Well, thanks for being here. Look forward to hearing what you have to say later. Okay, well, that's all I have to say about that. And that I think concludes the chair's report for me. Minutes. In your packet were minutes for the March 6th meeting of the CAC. Hopefully you all had an opportunity to review. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
Motion approved.
All right, Stephen Hollenkamp moves to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
Elia seconds. Is there any discussion on the minutes? Virtually, any discussion on the minutes? None in the room. All right, close discussion. I'll ask for a vote by acclamation. All in favor of approval, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Secretary, please note that as unanimous approval. Takes us to action items. Annual certification of metropolitan planning process. Sarah Caper, wearing two hats. At least.
Okay, good evening. Good to see everyone tonight. So I will be speaking on the certification report. Every 4 years, we do a comprehensive certification review for compliance with the MPO requirements. That happens with the Federal Highway Administration, the Federal Transit Administration, and FDOT. That was last done in 2021. So right now we're in an interim year where we do a review exclusively with FDOT, and that is the one that is before you today, included in your packet. This review covers what the TPO did in calendar year 2023. The review includes 3 components, which are in your packet. One is notable achievements, which are things that the TPO did that FDOT would like to highlight for us as best practices. The other are recommended actions. These are suggestions that the TPO can work on in the coming year. They're not requirements, and many of them are in fact recommending to continue work we're already doing. And then the third component are corrective actions. We have no corrective actions, which is great. These are things that we would have had to do and correct. So overall, a very good report for the TPO. I'll go through some of the notable achievements for you just to give you a sense of what was recognized. Things included in the report are the community air monitoring work, the revised CAC bylaws to gain more diversity in our representation, the increased public involvement efforts for the TIP amendments, and then some of our plans and studies like the electric vehicle plan study, infrastructure plan study, the freight supply chain resiliency study, the health impact assessments of LRTP complete street projects, and the needs assessment for equity. This is just a sample. The full list is in your packet, but there were about a dozen different of these notable achievements listed. Some of the recommended actions that were identified are to continue things we're already doing, like continuing to work with FDOT on our staff roles and responsibilities, continuing open communication with FDOT, continuing to evaluate our public inclusion and outreach, to continue to educate the TPO board and committees on the TPO's role and responsibilities, and to ensure local governments concur with our planning studies. And as I said, there were no corrective actions identified that we need to address. And we're asking for your recommended action tonight to support the recertification of the TPO and authorize the TPO chair to sign the joint certification statement.
That it?
That's it.
Okay. Any questions or comments, Sarah? Left side of the room. Nope, right side of the room. Christina Costa.
Thank you. Sarah, you mentioned the 3 TPO projects that are illuminated as best practices or elevated to best practice study. And I think one of them was the CAC diversification.
Yes.
And I just wondered how, we had a lot of graphs and charts that we were using to ascertain where we were and then where we wanted to be. And I'm just wondering, how did we do? I mean, we changed our meeting time, but do we in fact represent the county better today now than we did 2 years ago?
That's something I've been looking at. I don't have an answer for you.
Hold on.
Yeah.
I muted him for us.
Thank you.
Okay.
That is something that I've been paying attention to as we've been working on the transition and with the vacancies to see what kind of representation looks like today versus previously. So I don't have an answer for you right now, but we can come back with one, especially as we fill seats. But we can certainly provide an update to you on what it looks like.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the right side of the room here? Virtually, any hands up? I see Bill Roberts with his hand up. Bill, you recognize?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just real quickly, I'd like to echo Christina Costa's comment. I think it's time for us to take a look at measuring how these change in practices are benefiting the county. So thank you, Christine.
Any other questions or comments virtually? No. Anyone else in the room? Sarah, I have a question.
Yes.
Maybe it's a comment, maybe it's just a personality defect I have, I don't know. It has always been a curiosity to me that this process of certification is a joint effort. Oh, this isn't your choice, this is a matter of regulation. But the fact that FDOT and the TPO are shoulder to shoulder going through this process. But it's always left me with the feeling that somehow the TPO staff is a bit subservient, for lack of a better term, dependent upon, for maybe another sharper term, upon the Florida Department of Transportation to get through this certification process. Could you talk to us about how all that actually works politically and culturally within your system?
Sure. So the way the process works is that there are a series of questions that we are asked to complete. The FDOT sends the TPO staff a list of questions. They range in their topic area. Some of them, many of the questions are actually statewide questions. They're not something that District 7 controls. There are a subset of questions that District 7 provides to us. That is something like 5 questions out of probably more than 30 or 40. I'm not sure the exact number off the top of my head, but it's a very small amount that comes from District 7. The larger group of questions are statewide, and they range from invoicing practices to staff roles and responsibilities. For example, we send our org chart and say, Sarah's doing certification, Gina's doing active transportation, and explain kind of who is doing what, so that FDOT knows, who they might want to speak to about certain activities. It also, some of the questions ask us what we think our notable practices are, or what kind of studies or work we've done that we would like to call attention to. So the questions really vary from work product related. Some of them are related to what's your schedule for the LRTP adoption, knowing that it has to happen in 2024. So they range from those kind of work product questions to invoice and financial grants management questions, as well as a review of an invoice packet to make sure we're complying with grant procedures, to ones about who's doing what, how does staff work, and what do you want us to know as highlights of the TPO's 2023. And then after we get the questions, we as the TPO staff complete them, we send them to FDOT, and then we have a phone call where we talk about the responses together. FDOT might ask questions, we might talk to them about some of what we're seeing. And then at the end of that phone call, we're issued that report that's in the packet. That's that one page that says, these are the things that are notable, these are recommended actions, and these are corrective actions.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions or comments in the room or virtually? No? If Not, all right. The recommended action is to support recertification of the TPO and authorize the TPO chair to sign the joint certification statement. Is there an enabling motion?
So moved.
Dr. Davison moves, and I think Elia, was that your hand up as?
It wasn't, but yeah, sure.
Okay. Your draft, all right.
Thank you.
It was fine too if he wants to.
Okay, so Ilya gives us a second. And any further discussion? Do we need roll call on this?
We do not.
All right, I'll ask for a vote by acclamation. All in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, nay? Right, Madam Secretary, please note that's unanimous approval and recommendation to the TPO board. I would also note, if you didn't catch it, Gail, that Ms. Yassin stepped in virtually. At least I think she did. Is she still here?
Yeah.
Yes, I am here.
Hey, okay, welcome.
Thank you.
So please note her attendance virtually.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right. So that takes care of our action-packed action items. And we're now moving on to status reports. Parts, Tampa Arterial Bus Rapid Transit and Circular Project Update. Justin Willis, a part. You're on, Justin.
All righty, and my screen is sharing.
Looks that way.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me. Justin Willits, Director of Planning and Scheduling, Hillsborough Transit Authority, here to talk about our two service-related TIP items that were approved this cycle, the Tampa Arterial BRT and the circulator. As I just said, numbers 5 and 8 are the two TPO priority lists that were approved. The BRT and the circulator is both in collaboration with the City of Tampa and FDOT. And here I'm going to give you a little bit of a background on this project. It's been around a long time. I think most of you, well, a good portion of you in this room have known about this project for some time. It really was FDOT funded $2.5 million planning study that is now in a design phase for a bus rapid transit service. We started in 2019 to find a recommended alignment to advance through phase 1 with HART board approval. We advanced phase 2A in 2021 and 22 to move forward with the low cost alternative. Given a lot of funding uncertainty, there was a pretty big, a much bigger capital outlay project with median guideways on several segments of the project, including Fowler. We kind of refined those back to a lower cost alternative to keep it advancing and try to deliver the project. And we've still been working through the design of that low cost alternative, and we're still working on that now up to the end of FDOT's fiscal year, which is coming up in a few months, where we will wrap up our design work and hopefully have about a 60% design done to advance and look for capital funding for the project. So as I said, multi-jurisdictional collaboration with DOT and the city. The purpose is to connect the USF area and downtown through several of the most densely populated and transit-dependent communities in the Tampa Bay region. This market between USF and downtown has long been defined as the best transit market in Tampa Bay and the region. And a lot of our service is built around that connection. So it is a home run. It is the best market, and we know that this route will perform super well. The benefits to HART, we can operate at improved frequencies with a marginal increase in operating dollars and hopefully attract outside funding, primarily through the City of Tampa and maybe some service development grants from FDOT. And one of the key components is we already have really frequent, really great service that's utilized. It's our #1 ridership route. It always teeters between #1 and #2 with 56th Street corridor, so Route 1 is on Florida Avenue, Route 6 is on 56th Street, and that 56th Street route actually travels on the Florida Avenue corridor south of Florabraska, so that service would benefit from any dedicated lanes that we might deliver with this project. But the real key here to delivering an even better service with the existing dollars is because we can operate a better service faster with the same amount of vehicles. And that's really the whole game here. We average about 15 miles an hour generally for our local bus service. The national average is about 12 miles an hour. We're at 15. We're a little more spread out in suburban generally. So that's why we kind of have to move a little faster to cover more ground. But this service would be operating at closer to 20 miles an hour. So that means we can operate more frequently with the same amount of vehicles and the same amount of revenue hours, but deliver a better service. It's a very long-winded explanation of that, so I apologize. And then the benefits to Hart customers in the community is that we would position these corridors, the segments you see in red specifically, for basically congestion-proof transit service for decades to come. We would also be overlaying some express service into downtown on these corridors that would likely get off on the Flora-Nebraska exit, maybe MLK. We're kind of still working through some of those alternatives that would complement just the BRT route. But there are several other local services and potential express services that we might want to add to the corridor on certain segments. Like I was saying, the main benefit here, what we're trying to do is really cut down on that travel time. As most of you all probably know, Florida Avenue in the afternoon peak is pretty congested, particularly now because of the construction on the interstate. Florida Avenue is absorbing a lot of the traffic that would otherwise probably get on the interstate northbound 275. But in general, sometimes that traffic, if there's a wreck on 275 and Florida Avenue gets backed up even before construction, our travel time for that trip is scheduled at about 50 minutes, can be in excess of 80 minutes. This project looks to deliver that travel time in about 35 to 40 minutes. So it's a big improvement, a lot more consistent for our customers and for the potential customers that we want to attract to this type of service. And the frequency would be 10 minutes at the peak and then 15 minutes off peak, and on the weekends as well, 15 to 20 minutes. So sad news, we submitted a new federal grant. It was the same grant program that has funded the upcoming Ashley Drive reconnecting communities. There was a neighborhood access and equity component to that grant that we submitted, but we were not awarded. We found out several weeks ago. So we're going to do a debrief with the feds and try to see if we can improve the application for next year. But unfortunately, we're kind of back to square one, looking for capital funding to try to get this project done. But we're going to continue with our design work to get it moved along as far as we can, so we can keep considering different grants to go after. Generally, we would want to go after a capital investment grant through the Federal Transit Administration, but that requires a 25% local match for capital. And as most of you know, we do not have a robust local funding source here. We only have the $500,000 ad valorem that is maxed out. And our capital, we don't have a really solid capital funding source. We rely mostly on federal and state funding for capital items. And our number one capital priority is the heavy maintenance facility. So this service priority is not at the top of our most basic needs. This is more of a want right now, but it is our number one service want. And that's kind of where we stand currently. Sorry. So that gets us to the circulator, which is the other tip item. This concept kind of evolved out of an interim solution for the streetcar extension project, which does have federal money, state money allocated to it, and it is in the federal pipeline for the capital investment grant. Working with the city, we've identified the extension to Palm Avenue, and we've actually closed the loop over to Ybor because the ridership projections performed a lot better by doing that with a rubber tire interim solution. So that's what you see here. So the city has committed partial funding to this operation, about $400,000 a year for 2 years. But because we extended it further, the estimate has increased. So we need to find additional money. So we will probably submit this for some type of state matching application to deliver this service, and try to figure out what kind of vehicles we're going to operate on it and what the appetite is for the city to contribute more money and if it's going to come from the CRAs. And we're having all those discussions currently. And we would make some trade-offs with their existing service to kind of rebalance what we already have on the corridor to make sure that this is cost neutral to Hart. And that's pretty much a wrap here. I'm happy to take any questions, but so yeah, the current status, we're still working with FDOT. They have some money allocated to the corridor for the Heights Raise Grant, and there's some money allocated for the Fowler project. Both of those segments are where we would like to get a dedicated lane. There is some potential legislation, I think it's on the governor's desks, related to lane repurposings, which was kind of out of a, in my opinion, misguided backlash to some of the BRT projects over in Pinellas. And that's going to make it a little bit tricky how we navigate this process. So we're kind of slowing our roll on formally submitting the lane repurpose application for existing service. We want to put together a service plan that's got some of that overlaid express service and potentially the circulator in addition to the really great Route 1 service that currently connects to the streetcar. Before we go into that process, there may be additional requirements that will cost us more staff time and probably consultant support to pursue that, but it is still something that we are entertaining. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Justin, thank you. Any questions in the room, left side? Dana Lazarus.
Two questions come to mind, one for each project. One for the BRT. Any thoughts on why? I know I'm interested in the debrief that you're going to have with the feds, but I'm wondering why the project wasn't considered for funding. And I'm just wondering if you have any thoughts or theories and what you guys might do differently, just in case we don't hear about the debrief.
I have thoughts and theories that I could share with you in person, but
Okay.
I don't think there were any BRT projects that were awarded.
Okay.
So I think that was part of it. And it's a pretty complicated corridor. There's been a partial award for the streetcar project on the same corridor. And that project was originally supposed to go before the BRT project, and we were going to use the same guideway from Whiting Street to Palm Avenue. And then we weren't going to have to absorb any costs on that segment. So that really reduced our costs for our project. So when we put that cost back in to go through that application, it increased the capital cost and the capital outlay for it. So that kind of complicated things. But I think it's probably not enough united political support is always a big part of that. The fact that it's an election year and it's not super fancy and shiny for those who control the purse strings. So there's probably a lot of reasons, but they may say that, hey, if you want a BRT project, you should go through CIG, but it was a potential, it was a good application and a good strategy to go after that one. Is very rarely and I don't really even know of any that are 100% federal matches. And that's why we went for it, because we don't have the capital match for the 20%, 25% for the CIG. So we went all in on this. It paralleled a dividing facility at like 275, which bisected neighborhoods. This reconnected with great transit to try to provide alternatives to people to driving through a bisected community. So we thought it really fit the intention of reconnecting communities and neighborhood access and equity, given, the affordable housing on the corridor in the northern parts of Seminole Heights and Tampa Heights and the university area, Sulphur Springs. So I'm hoping they come back to us with some pretty positive feedback and how we can maybe refine it for next year. So I'm optimistic, but it was pretty disappointing because we really wanted to try to get this in while the state has their construction money before their projects start getting built, so we can really maximize those dollars to not have to go back in after things are done to make additional improvements and disrupt the neighborhoods multiple times, especially in the southern part and downtown. So
Dana, you have two questions.
Yeah, and a quick follow-up, did you do community engagement for the grant? Because this was a capital grant, not the planning grant, but I'm just wondering if you demonstrated any community engagement or demand for the BRT.
We relied on years and years of engagement back from the TPO's study of the Florida Tampa pairs 10 years ago to FDOT's Heights Mobility study, which actually recommended two different alternatives. It was either transit lane or a buffered bike lane. And then tons of outreach for our BRT in the planning phase. So once we got wind of the grant, it was like full speed, just get the application out. So we included engagement in the application to go to finalize the design and construction. So there was an engagement element that was included in the plan, but not during the development of the application.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else left side of the room? Jim Davis.
Yeah, Jess, that was a great presentation. Were there any alternative financing schemes, or did you look at value capture? Did you look at TOD grants? Is there a list of revenue streams that you looked at that we could look at and give an evaluation?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we actually have another round of the TOD study pilot money that is we're working on getting that project out the door now, that is going to focus on station area development further up the corridor. But I think that is going to be something that we do look into, and the city of Tampa, that's a key element to what they are looking at to deliver a variety of transit projects. So that's kind of our backup plan. The Regional Infrastructure Accelerator program is really to look at innovative financing to get a big federal loan and then pay it back through value capture. So that is definitely, that's like, our backup plan to try to get this project done. And that's also got the streetcar project in there and a couple of other priorities. So we've done some projecting of what our ad valorem is going to generate in the next few years, but I'm not a brilliant economist, so it's been a little bit out of my lane. But I'm trying to come along pretty quickly. So that is something that we're going to look at on the Florida Avenue corridor specifically. There are some major developments. The YMCA project specifically is going to generate some revenue, but with a $500,000, the amount of development we really need to move the needle is incredible. So working through the city to do an additional assessment specific to a project, I think is probably the right way to go. So I think you're on the right track there. One of the few things we have is service dollars on the corridor to deliver the service, but the capital is again the real question. So we're definitely going to be pursuing that further. So that's a great comment.
Don't put another mill on the ballot this year, will you?
Yeah, I'm not sure that's going to go very
Yes,
far.
yes, Mr. Chair.
I just want to make sure everyone present knows what TOD is. We're speaking a little bit in code, so Justin, if you could give us just a simple definition of TOD for those who don't know it by heart.
Yeah, transit-oriented development. So, density near transit with streets that are safe for walking and crossing, and usually less parking than, suburban office park. So, things that interact and benefit transit. Because right now, a lot of our service area is fairly low density, but we still generate a lot of ridership on some of those corridors. So this is about bringing people to the existing corridors rather than us spread ourselves too thin with not great service, but bringing more development to the areas we already see. And it's pretty interesting. That's the trend that we're actually finally seeing in Tampa now, is a lot of redevelopment with density. It's just a lot of the cost of those places that are redeveloping is pushing out our riders historically. So we've got to kind of evolve pretty rapidly to deliver faster service from further out, because the core riders that used to live inside the city are no longer there in as great of numbers. So it's kind of a pretty tricky situation.
Joe, sorry, you had.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Justin, in 2020, I'm going to focus on the extension of the streetcar. in 2020, when I first brought this to city council about extending the streetcar, and with Karen Cress's great work on parking minimums up and down Florida, Tampa Street, and with the developers across the street from the YMCA devoting land just for a station for the streetcar. This streetcar extension would go through 3 CRAs. And with Ybor being a CRA, downtown and Channelside being a CRA, do you have any explanation on why the CRA board is dragging their feet on paying for at least the operating funds for at least the next 4 or 5 years, the 4 or 5 years it would be there? I mean, if CRA board could spend 25 mil on the arts, I would think that they would want to spend at least the operating budget for this to help develop the areas downtown that are still in need of public mass transportation for the workers downtown. Not to put you on the spot, Joe.
Yeah, I don't think the operating dollars are are a challenge, because we run 5-car, and I say we because Hart operates the streetcar. THS is the governing entity that the city of Tampa funds it, right? So we're the owner of the assets and we operate the streetcar. So the operating dollars for the extension are not insurmountable. I think that the 1.2 million for the circulator to go up and over to Palm is probably a good placeholder for the cost of the operation of a streetcar if it was extended to Palm and back. It's really about the capital outlay, that 67 million that they need to match with the state. And that's probably going to be revised down in this project development process that we're working with the city on to get back in FTA and get that fired back up. So yeah, it's really a political question for the city to handle. And I think that regional infrastructure accelerator program that the city has won is going to help them identify those kinds of strategies for value capture. But what the CRA does with their money is, as you said, that's their political football. We love the streetcar. It's super successful. It's the top 4 routes in Tampa Bay. I mean, in Hart's network, it's up there on the weekends. It's gangbusters, and on the weekday, our routes do a little bit better, our top 3 routes. But we're happy to operate it, and we look forward to collaborating. But we're focused on bus service, and we would love for council to start putting CRA dollars away to fund that capital project, because it will benefit the bus on Florida and Tampa if that's where the alignment remains, which is also something that they got to work out in project development.
Then to that point, the cost of paint for laying down a BRT bus for this project now, for the extension of the streetcar for now, would be minimal. So why can't we go ahead and lay down that paint using CRA money, prove that this circulator or the extension would work, and then go back and ask for the grants?
That's been talked about over the years. Bus lane pilot project was something that we were entertaining for a while. There's got to be some pretty strong political unity and agency collaboration there. So I would love to see that happen. That was kind of our hope for the Heights project to be constructed with the bus lane. The city would give up some parking downtown, because that's not where we would be taking a lane. We would be taking parking out downtown. That was for the streetcar and or the BRT. So there's I would I'm all for it. But depending on the state legislation, we may have to have our board weigh in on any lane repurposing applications. So we'll see. I assume the governor is going to sign. That's HB 1301 for any of you nerds out there. But yeah, I think I would say that you should encourage your political leadership that that's something that you would like to see, and I would be happy to take action when they tell me to.
Justin, thank you. Not to put you on the spot, but it all goes back to politics, doesn't it?
Okay, any other questions, comments over here? Matt Sink.
Hey, thank you for your presentation. It's really good. Couple questions that I have. Regarding the vehicle type, what is the concept or what's the thought process on what what kind of bus, or is it gonna look like a trolley to attract a different kind of user? Since you said it's changing around there to look more like a trolley, like what's the thought process, or smaller format?
Which service are you referring to? The
Oh,
circulator?
for the circulator, sorry, I apologize.
So originally, when we first started discussing this with the city, we said, hey, we could do this with existing buses, not impact our daily service and operate it for 400,000 a year from Whiting to Palm. So the city said, all right, we'll commit to that for 2 years, but 2 years isn't enough to commit, because if it's not successful, we end up just cutting the service and it's a flop. So the more we talked with our council members and the CRA CACs, they're more interested in a brand. They don't want it to be this is not everybody, but quite a few times I heard, we don't want it to just be a regular bus. We want it to be branded to really stand out, something that we can market. And I agree with that, as much as I just want to put the service out there. So it would probably be, maybe there's some talk of maybe electric vehicles to do a little pilot. We have some grant money out there that we need a match for. So just a unique branded streetcar extension vehicle, maybe not necessarily like the old in-towner trolley, but just something that's unique. One of the problems with our existing fleet is once you get the feds to help you pay for a vehicle, you can't brand it and put it on a specific service because it's a Title VI issue. Because it's like you put the nice buses in the rich neighborhood or something, basically is the theory. But if you put that in the application that it's for that service to the feds, you're good. But so we can't just brand an existing vehicle, and that's kind of where we're at with like, well, we need to go after some specific vehicles. So that's kind of why it's slowed down, because we know that that's probably what the CRA, CACs, and the CRA board, aka City Council, is going to want if we go and try to deliver this. But we've got to get those vehicles lined up, and that's a 12-month lead time. And I'll try not to elaborate further, but you get my drift.
Thank you.
That it?
That's it.
You good? Okay. Anything over here on the right side, Christine?
Hey, Justin, great presentation. I just love the BRT and the circulator proposal. But then it's been a few years, I took a really deep look at the BRT. Can you remind me where we left off on the displacement of the bike lanes on Tampa and Florida apps? I recall lobbying in the past for Franklin to become a real shared slow street to absorb any people who want to bike north and south and don't want to be in the way of the buses or lose the less than wonderful painted only bike lanes on those fast streets. So can you tell me where we left off on that?
Sure. So the DOT Heights project is planning to widen the sidewalks and eliminate the bike lane for the improvements that they're helping deliver on Ola and Central bike boulevards. So as far as I know, south of MLK, the bike lanes are planned to go away, and the sidewalks should be much more pleasant for riding bikes than they currently are, and hopefully more pleasant than the bike lane is right now as well, as somebody who frequents those bike lanes on days where I'm not patient enough to go through the neighborhood.
Right. Do you think Carlton Doyle is also another north-south corridor that could be better enhanced to take up that displaced bicycle space?
I think so. I mean, I know that there's some appetite at the city to get more bikes off of the Riverwalk, so I think that would make sense for that. But I think that Franklin and Morgan, Marion, and Central are all really great alternatives for bikes specifically.
Okay, thanks. Ryan.
You good?
Sure.
Greg?
Yeah, with all the emphasis these days on mass transit and the reduction of congestion on our roadways, I would think the DOT would have some interest in helping us expand, public transit. And with the emphasis on USF and possibly University of Tampa or something, could those folks involved, find some contribution to, because you're transporting students and people going to the medical center, I'm assuming to that area. And wouldn't they have some interest in seeing that we improve services and could they contribute in some way or fashion? It just seems like there should be other alternatives to the financing than we currently are looking at.
Yeah, I mean, I came from a school that I paid for free bus service at, and it basically funded 60% of the bus network there. So I would love to see USF fund more. But there's not been a lot of discussions on that front that I'm aware of. Yeah, we'd love to entertain more options, and we're definitely open to it. But yeah, DOT, I think DOT is probably more open to trying to deliver this. I mean, they put a bus lane in their Heights grant application. I think the pushback is coming from higher up lately, and as we're seeing in legislation. So it's our state legislatures and the governor that are a little more weary of lane repurposing. So that's made this project a little more political at the state level. So that's some of the hesitation now on pushing forward, especially without a robust capital plan for funding the stations and branding the service and getting it done. So we're going to entertain all options, but right now we're kind of, this is just where we're at. It's our reality.
Thank you.
Okay, any questions from our virtual crowd?
I think Josh has got his hand up still.
Josh Frank, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, I switched headphones, so this should be good. I've got two questions, Justin. That was awesome. I first comment is I helped the city of Syracuse put their Reconnecting Communities grant together, and I saw your application. I thought it was absolutely in line with everything the RCA was meant to do. So I'm super bummed that y'all didn't get it, because I think it would have been great. But I would encourage you to keep applying as long as it lasts, and hopefully that's for another term. We'll see. So my questions are two. One is, how is the BRT? Have you factored in the Metro Rapid improvements DOT is working on with the signal timing and all this stuff on Nebraska with the BRT on Florida in any regards? Is there any way that those two things work together?
Yeah, so that's a funny story because Hart paid for signal priority on the Nebraska corridor 12 years ago, and DOT never let us turn the signals on because it was too close to the interstate. So fun little tidbit there. But there's the DOT is doing more work with the city on signal priority along Florida and activating basically some of the signal priority on Nebraska. We're actually in the testing phase with some of that right now. It's really exciting because it works with some of the existing routers on board our vehicles. So I think that we're going to be delivering more TSP on our regular bus service pretty soon. It's going to be passive, not going to like blow up the intersection timing, because all of those signals or anything that impacts the main line of 275 is they're not going to do it just to benefit transit and then back up traffic on the main line is the whole idea there. But it is going to say if we're 10 minutes late and they can add 30 seconds of green time for the bus, they'll do it as long as the big cycles stay on cue. And so that's kind of where we're at with that. And I'm excited because Hillsborough Avenue is on that list. There's several big corridors that are our busiest ones. So I'm optimistic in the short term, but if we do deliver a big project, it's just going to be even better, but it's also going to benefit existing service.
So I'm one of the comments I remember specifically leaving on the BRT page was about the intersect or the underpasses to 275 that aren't exits that connect the two routes. So between Metro Rapid and the number one. So for example, Broad Street and Hannah and Osborne and Lake and some of those other ones that, those are sort of the pedestrian and cyclist route to connect those two routes. The one in Metro Rapid, which is is it 400 or 800? It's the
400.
400. I'm wondering, has the city looked at, or are you working with the city on identifying those as, you know, the first mile, last mile connections to, for example, those of us on the east side of Seminole Heights, to get to the number one, which is really kind of treacherous in a lot of places today. So that was part A, and then part B is also thinking about the high injury network overall. So as you jog onto Meridian, for example, that's on the high injury network. I don't think Jackson is, but I think Twigs is north of there. And so is not Cumberland, but the area just to the west of Cumberland when you get back on Florida Ave. So y'all are just like in real close proximity to a bunch of pretty nasty stroads. Just wondering how much coordination is going on that regard as well.
Yeah, so there was early in the planning phase, we looked at a bunch of like intersecting route improvements and pedestrian and bike improvements, and kind of handed those back off to the city and the state. So those have kind of been out of mind for a while now, which is now several years because that was so long ago. But those recommendations stand, and one of those was the bike boulevards. Was part of that. I think that was kind of Heights Mobility. They kind of blur together with the BRT study.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've talked to Thea a little bit about Meridian. I think they're much more open than they used to be, given their new executive director. So I'm happy to be talking to him more, and they seem to be going in the right direction. But yeah, I mean, that's all folded in. The one thing will say on the high injury network, the segment of the BRT shown from Waters to Linebaugh is also on the HIN. So
Yep.
that could be a standalone grant application in and of itself. To do a lane repurposing there. That's another segment that's under capacity. So yeah, I think most of our stations either incorporated an additional flashing crosswalk or something to enhance the actual access. Because like you said, Florida Avenue used to be a nightmare through Seminole Heights, but now there's like 4 more signals.
Yeah.
So getting to the Route 1 is much better than it used to be up there. Hasn't changed much in the southern portion, but it's way better, and it's actually not great. It's slowing down our service a lot. So you gotta take it with a grain of salt, but I'm an operations guy. So I love the signals for the safety, but we don't have priority on them yet. So they're slowing us down a lot.
Yeah. I guess my concern is more for the folks who have to cross underneath 275 to get to it, as opposed to as a better option now than taking Metro Rapid. Cause they're more or less parallel for the entirety of them. So for instance, you know, I know a lot of people would take Broad to get underneath 275 to take the 1 versus taking Metro Rapid. And if that's the case, you know, crossing Nebraska is really challenging. And then Broad itself, just to use that one, is, you know, really wide, really fast, kind of not well draining, you know, needs love to make that connection. So it's just, I'm glad that exists somewhere, and I'll just make sure to poke whoever is able to keep pursuing it. But my last question was on the circulator. Did you look at other options or other extensions? Because it sounded like the timing was, you know, you were thinking the BRT was going to happen after the streetcar, so you could use the lanes and the stations and all that. But now the circulator is sort of meant to take the place of the streetcar in lieu of that happening, and then the BRT is going to happen first. So if that's the case, I was wondering, since the BRT doesn't have its capital source yet, did you look at, for example, the circulator taking up the first 3 stations of the BRT on the number 1 and overlapping there, or going west to Armature Works rather than completing the loop underneath? Just because I've always been curious about the loop, but it seems like going underneath at that spot maybe really doesn't have a whole lot of access or a whole lot of activity, and wondering how you determine that one versus maybe some other options. I could be wrong.
Yeah, we looked at going further north with the circulator, but that became really duplicative with the Route 1 service and the future BRT. So because we wanted to really provide a more holistic service to complement the streetcar as it exists today, that's why closing the loop seemed like a better idea. And then it panned out with the ridership numbers that we did. The estimates prove that. And really what it would do is help us probably eliminate a few stops on Route 1 to speed up that service, and then kind of clean up the every other block with the circulator. So we felt like it complemented both the streetcar and the existing service on Florida and Tampa. And then, you know, for people riding south from Armature, they walk out to Tampa Street. And then if you're riding north, you get off on Florida, and it's a 3-block walk, and that's about it.
Yeah. I don't think that one's as, I understand the logic behind that one. I think a little bit more. I was wondering more or less, rather than running that loop on
Frank.
Palm to go to Columbus. Yeah.
Josh, we need to bring this in for a landing, buddy.
All right. I can nerd out with Justin for hours. You know that. My bad.
I know you can. We're running behind schedule. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Justin. A great report.
I don't want to leave Ed hanging.
Ed, quickly, please.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, I've been on the committee for quite a few years now, and this is probably the best presentation I've seen from Hart. And it makes me feel really good about the leadership that we've seen at Hart over the last couple of years.
Well, I'll take that as a closing. Thanks, Ed. I appreciate it.
Amen.
Wait a
Next in the mail.
Congratulations, Justin. That's no small compliment coming from this group.
All right. Well, thank
Okay,
you all.
thank you.
And Ed, wish you well in your hospital visit, whatever it's for. Take care.
Okay, thanks.
All right, that moves us to preliminary draft of fiscal year 25-26 Unified Planning Work Program. Did we not have a presentation on this like last month?
Yes, you did.
That was a status. This is a status. What's the difference?
This is on, so the last presentation, we were asking for your feedback to help us develop the Unified Planning Work Program projects and what would go in it. And this is an update on what is actually in the draft, which has been, I don't want to steal Amber's thunder, but the draft is in its review process with the different authorities. And so we're coming to you with the actual draft itself to make sure that we heard you and see if you have any feedback before it's finalized.
Okay, well, let's kick it off. Amber Simmons, are you here?
I am. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Terrific. So yeah, as Sarah mentioned, the purpose of this evening is to give you an opportunity to comment on the draft of the Unified Planning Work Program, which initially it was to let you know this is what's coming and we're developing it. This is your chance to comment on the draft, but which contains our 2-year TPO budget and the timeline for completion. As you may recall, we gave you an introduction to the document last month again. And the full draft of this document is now posted on our website, and it's provided in a link in your agenda item. So the Unified Planning Work Program is a requirement of the TPO, and it's a federal document that coordinates transportation planning activities, and it outlines the TPO budget for the next fiscal years. And as you may recall, the Unified Planning Work Program differs from the Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, in that the TIP identifies and prioritizes specific projects, while the UPWP consists of planning studies necessary to carry out programs and are the precursors for qualifying for certain discretionary funding opportunities. It becomes effective July 1st, 2024, and is valid through June 30th, 2026. The task numbers within the UPWP outline the work to be completed, and examples of work that's found under each task are: Task 1 is all pretty much administrative, such as the UPWP development and its revisions, grants management, certification, apportionment, updates, and invoicing. Task 2 covers quite a bit of territory. It's complete streets, corridor studies, congestion, safety, ITS projects, resiliency, active transportation, intermodal and freight, transit, transportation demand management, transportation disadvantage planning, and the environment. While Task 3 focuses on the Long Range Transportation Plan, or LRTP, and amendments, data collection, those are things like traffic counts, multimodal counts, level of service database. Task 4 is the TIP or Transportation Improvement Plan. It's prioritization and amendments, state TIP coordination. Our 5th task is all about our outreach efforts, the committees and board work that we do. And task 6 is all our local and state and regional coordination with our partners, such as the Sun Coast Transportation Planning Alliance and the Tampa Bay Transportation Management Area. Task 7 will be new for us. That's the exploration of our efforts spent exploring a regional MPO. Task 8 is also regional in nature, but that tracks transfers of funds between MPOs. And the UPWP budget consists of planning and FTA funds of $2,495,390 for fiscal year 25, $2,539,070 in fiscal year 26, $600,000 annually in surface transportation block grant dollars, and lastly, an estimated $53,000 a year in Commission for Transportation Disadvantaged or CTD funds. It does not include any funds that we are deobligating in fiscal year 24 or any discretionary grant funds. The obligated funds for fiscal year 24 that will be made available later in 25 is $650,350. What that means, the deobligated funds are, these are funds that we see we're going to need that we're on projects in work that we're doing that's not yet completed, but we're going to need that money to finish those projects in the next fiscal year. So we have to say, okay, take this money and we'll deobligate it for now. That allows the government to move it from this contract and put it in the next contract so we can finish up our work. So our schedule and milestones that you see here, the preliminary draft has been submitted to DOT for their first review. And we're sharing that draft with you, which again, by the way, is linked in your agenda item. And you can find it on our website under Plans and Studies, Unified Planning Work Program. And we're going to be taking your comments and feedbacks to the board, and the summary of the comments are documented in the appendices of the work program. In May, the board will approve the final version of the UPWP and is submitted to DOT by May 15th. Then what happens is DOT and Federal Highway reviews it, comments, and the new UPWP becomes effective July 1st, 2024. This is a summary in our extremely text-heavy slide of the projects that we did in 23 and 24. It also contains the 2-year current disadvantaged business enterprise percentage, of which the TP has 13% for our currently eligible DBE projects. For fiscal year 25 and 26, these are our critical path projects, and those are projects that the TPO is required to do, as well as those which are started in fiscal year 25 and will continue into 26. And you can see here a lot of those are finishing up, and a few of the remaining projects for the LRTP. This slide are our requests for planning and analysis, and it's not really a checklist or an exhaustive list of each project, but it's the projects that we're exploring based on funding and partner interest. These areas include transit, complete streets, non-motorized planning, technology, freight, and multimodal studies that you see here. And I'd like to open it up for comments and discussion, and we'll be making some notes for the suggestions and adding them to the summary comments in the final UPWP.
Okay, left side of the room, buddy. Jim Davis.
Yeah, that was great, Amber. Really appreciate it. Is there any task that would look at how the TPO or used to be the MPO has performed in its efficiency and accuracy over the last 10 years? You know, the state budgets have to go back 10 years to look at things so that people can get an idea of the growth of budgets and things like that. Is there anything that the efficiency and the accuracy of our work that we're doing, is there any metric that you can put together in a task to have that looked at?
That's a good question. I know we have,
That's your question.
yeah, Sarah is dying to jump on this.
So, and I think this was discussed a little bit at the last meeting too. Are you referring to how the TPO staff is doing with the work that we do as planning agency, or the work that happens from some of the projects or programs that, like the TIP?
I mean, much of your work is predictive. And you made predictions 5 years ago, 2 years ago, 10 years ago. What was the accuracy of those predictions over a period of time so that the work you're doing, you can't identify an error in your predictive process if you don't look back to see how you're doing? That's continuous improvement. And that's what I was talking about as a task. That would make it.
Well, there's two things that come to mind. One thing is the state of the system report, which is going to be coming out. That talks about our performance overall in this community. And we've influenced those by funding different, helping to fund different things. But I think what you were getting at, and I'm pretty sure this is it, tell me if I'm wrong, but we've done these long range plans looking out years. Well, we've done one for 2025, that's next year. Like, how did we do back in 20?
Yeah, I have
to say in 2025, we're forecast versus cost feasible or that kind of.
But you don't have to go back that far. You can go back 10 years and you can look at that predictions because you were making 10-year projections in many of the long range plans that you were producing and see where the accuracy was. Were the places that you predicted congestion? Were those the places that the congestion appeared? That kind of thing. And there may be money out there that the feds and the state would actually grant to, because it can be shared by all the MPOs in the whole country.
I think it would already be covered. We'd have to set aside some money to do the project, gauge what we have that we could do for that, but it certainly would fall within the tasks that are in the EPWP, and the language in the EPWP covers that kind of activity.
Anybody else on the left side of the room? Right side of the room? Nope, virtual, on the wall. Anybody? I don't see any hands up. Am I missing anybody? Nope. Okay, well, Amber, great job. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Did you need something else from us at this point?
No, we're just going to be, yeah, so our whole purpose was really to take your comments, which we will do. And then we include a summary of those comments within the UPWP. The final piece is, it's actually in the appendices that goes into that. And so that we use it to, when we're considering what projects are we doing and what things do we know that people are looking at for prioritization, and just generally to make sure that we captured any questions or comments that you have.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Certainly.
Community Air Monitoring Network. Lizzie Baker. I have no idea what this is. Curious.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to share my screen.
Might need to volume up just a little bit.
Can you hear me now? Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All
Thanks.
right.
The screen looks really dark, though. I don't know if there's some brightness adjustment.
It's just the background.
Okay, we got you.
My name is Lizzie Baker, Plan Hillsborough staff. So today I will be talking to you about the Community Air Monitoring Network. And this is a project that we are working on with the USF College of Public Health, as well as the Environmental Protection Commission of Hillsborough County and numerous community organizations. And we are studying air quality in underserved communities along the interstates using low-cost air quality monitors. This actually started as a pilot study in 2021, and it came from a suggestion from the TPO's Technical Advisory Committee, as well as at the same time, we were hearing concerns from the community about air pollution near the interstates. So based on that, We applied for and received a grant from Federal Highway and conducted a pilot study. And that pilot study would go on to test and analyze low-cost air quality monitors and that data, and then also engage the community in air monitoring. We would also go on to establish community pilot sites or community air monitoring sites and provide access to that data. And then lastly, we also developed methods to establish a much larger community monitoring network. So during the pilot study, we established 7 community air monitoring sites, which are the red sites that you can see on the screen. USF also identified 2 monitors that were suitable for community air monitoring. So that's the Clarity Node S and the Purple Air. And USF and EPC also worked together to locate the low-cost air quality monitors next to the EPC regulatory monitors for testing and data correction purposes. And that was partly how they identified the 2 monitors. So based on the success of the pilot study, we applied for and received additional funding from the EPA and Federal Highway to expand the pilot study and develop a community air monitoring network. So this project is fully funded by the discretionary grants. So between 2023 and 2026, we will be establishing approximately 20 to 25 additional community air monitoring sites along all of the interstates. So we'll be looking at 275, I-4, and 75. We'll be evaluating the data and the pollutant concentrations over a longer period of time. And then we're also focusing on building capacity within the community around air pollution, air monitoring, and how the built environment plays a role. So I talked a little bit about the origins, but why are we doing this? Really, what we're working towards is community capacity around air pollution and air monitoring. We also want to be able to characterize and continually monitor localized air quality in communities where people spend their time, where they live, learn, work, and play. We also want to use this data to inform future transportation and land use planning and decision-making processes. And we want to equitably improve air quality, meaning that communities are not disproportionately affected by traffic-related air pollution due to proximity. And lastly, we want to better understand the low-cost air quality monitors and the data that comes from them, so we can identify how to effectively complement the regulatory air monitors that EPC runs. These are kind of the project team's long-term goals. There are a lot of organizations involved in it, and all of these can really be achieved and informed by a community air monitoring network. So there will be a lot that we accomplish between March of 2023 and March of 2026 when the EPA grant timeline ends. So we'll focus on where we're at right now in the December to May of 24 timeframe. Right now, we are working we're preparing for the first coalition meeting on April 18th of 2024. This is open to anyone who's interested in the network and learning more about it. So I would encourage anyone who's interested to join us. It's in the evening from 5 to 6:30, and that'll be a virtual meeting. We also will have a public survey that goes out to get input on where people want to see the community air monitoring effort take place. And that will contribute to us identifying the future sites for about 8 to 12 monitors for this phase. And then USF will also be co-locating or putting the monitors next to the EPC sites again for testing. And during this time, we've also been developing a guidebook. So that serves as a reference for the community and community sites. And then we're also working with Hillsborough County Public Schools to bring community air monitoring activities and education to the schools. So if we look a little bit closer at what we're doing right now, we're in the site selection process to identify the future sites. And a huge part of that is community collaboration, partly because we want residents to gain an understanding of air quality. In addition to that, the community sites would not exist without it. So community engagement's really ingrained throughout the entire site selection process. And that process is a multi-step approach. The first step that we take is to identify general areas for community air monitoring. So we prioritize the general areas to focus our efforts on. Then we explore the potential sites within the communities that are identified. We'll also get suggestions from the community and stakeholders. And then based on that, we confirm the sites. USF goes out and conducts field visits, and then we sign the agreements and install the monitors and the signage. Right now, we are exploring potential community sites, and we are also beginning engagement with the community and stakeholders. So if we dive a little bit deeper at into those first two steps, which is prioritizing the areas and the sites for community air monitoring, those are actually informed by two criteria. So the first one is the community selection criteria, which we use to narrow down the areas. And this draws from the EPA's EJ Screen tool, the TPO's non-discrimination and equity plan, as well as modeling and research and input from the community. So the three criteria for part one are environmental factors, which is the proximity to the interstate. The second one is demographic factors, predominantly looking at low-income populations and locations with the majority of people of color. Based on the feedback that we got during our kickoff meeting, we actually added in some additional factors that you can see on the screen. And lastly, the third factor is community access and engagement. So is this really an area where people are located and spending time? And then once we narrow down those areas, then we look at which sites within those areas are most suitable. And that criteria, the site selection criteria, looks at, again, community access and engagement, but honing in on where people really spend their time. And then also proximity to the interstate. And now we look more specifically at locations within 1,000 feet of the interstate. And then we do have a couple sites that are located more than 3,000 feet within the vicinity of an existing site, and those are used for comparison sites. And then in addition to that, we look at whether or not this organization is actually interested in being involved long-term in the network. And we also look at logistical considerations like power, access, or if there's a location where it will receive sun if it has a solar panel. So things of those natures. And based on the community selection criteria, the pink shaded areas that you see here were prioritized for community air monitoring. So this is where we're currently exploring potential sites and getting input. So if you have any suggestions for potential sites, then we'd love to hear those ideas, and you can share those now. If you think of it later, then you can send me an email. We'll also be sending out a survey, so you can provide suggestions at that time. And that concludes my presentation. Just a quick reminder that we do have the public survey coming out, so definitely I'll send that out to you. And then also if you have any suggestions, please feel free to provide those. And we have the coalition meeting on the 18th from 5 to 6:30. And the last thing that I'll say before we get to questions is Wyatt, who just joined the TPO. I'm really excited that he'll also be working on this project. So both of us are available if you have questions in the future. But I am here to take questions now if you have them.
Hey, Lizzie, thank you. Jim Davison, I saw your hand up.
Lizzie, it was a great presentation. All of them have been good tonight. Very well. This is a great study. You could expand this study on end, and when you're talking about stakeholders, did you consider USF, I imagine, is doing the environmental monitoring, but is there anybody at the medical school that you talk to, FDOT, not only knowing what the air quality is, but what's going on at the time of on I-75 or I-275, so that you can look at it, and it can't just be a time thing. You can have an accident on I-275 at 10 o'clock in the morning, and the traffic will back up for 3 miles, and the air quality you would suppose would go up. But does that mean that there are more people that show up at St. Joseph's Hospital, at Advent Hospital, at Tampa General Hospital from respiratory and cardiac diseases? It becomes important in planning. It becomes important in budgeting. And that's the information that the elected officials and the people that control the funds need. Because if you can give them that information, if you have a traffic jam and it's going to put 10 people in the hospital that are in their homes, you need to take care of this. And so you don't want to let that slip away. That's an important thing. And there may be a lot of money in the medical field to apply for through USF and other entities and through the hospitals that you can actually help pay for it. And partners are always good when they bring money.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. We're speaking about USF, so we're working with the USF College of Public Health. Regarding the future funding, I think that's a really great point that we could look to hospitals. We have not yet approached the question of how do we fund this in the future. But I definitely will take that down as a note because I think that's a great point.
And if you could hook up, if there's some type of camera so that you can look at the time of what's going on the highway and put that together with the air quality at the monitors, then you would have an idea of what's going on the highway and what's going on at the air quality monitor. And that would cover all your bases.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Ilya?
First of all, great presentation. I had a question. So basically, we know that these communities in one way or another are getting the short end of the stick with the higher respiratory illness and then the noise pollution, which can lead to dementia. Once these results are gathered, what can actually be done to help improve the air quality of these communities?
Yeah, again, a good question. So that's part of what we'll be determining when we get the findings. So we'll be developing recommendations on how to improve air quality based on what we see and what we find. I mentioned the coalition meeting. There will also be recommendations that come out of that. So the coalition is actually made up of really anyone who's interested, as well as the community air monitoring sites. And so there will be quarterly meetings for the coalition. And when the grant comes to an end, then they'll also help provide some of those recommendations.
Gotcha. Thank you so much. And then I had a second comment / question. During the community engagement, I guess, to make these improvements, you're also probably going to need a political unity or will. During these community engagements, has it been thought about? I know you guys can't do this directly, trying to garnish public support for improving the air quality. But I feel like if the communities are made aware in like I guess more of a blunt way about the health risks that they face by living near these highways, then maybe, they would be more willing to support projects that, I don't know what could help, like maybe capping a highway. I don't know, I'm just throwing out ideas, but yeah, something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And since we're working with the USF College of Public Health, they've actually been really pivotal in that. And they have provided a lot of educational materials about the health risks and the health effects. So that is part of what gets distributed and part of actually what they're providing for curriculum or for the educational materials for the schools as well.
Okay, any other comments or questions here on the left side? Oh, right side? Christina,
Yes.
hand up, yeah.
Yes, hand up. Great presentation. I have a couple of questions for you, so I'll just put them all out there for you, a couple at a time. I don't think I see the Selman Expressway on your list of highways, and I know that they are going to be expanding their service through South Tampa. Some of their facilities wouldn't comply with modern day highway building. You could practically give a high five to a passenger from a backyard. Some of the locations that they have there, it's really, they're right down at surface level in the neighborhoods through there. So I'm interested in whether or not THEA can be included in that expressway authority. To what Dr. Davison was saying about the health impacts, have you engaged the Florida Department of Health and sort of considered the epidemiology perspective, which is what he was aiming at there? With the air quality, I'm wondering if you could reiterate what is being measured specifically. I think there's we all know about emissions, but also the particulate matter. And a lot of people think that with electric cars becoming more popular, that we have improved air quality. But as I understand it, the particulate matter from cars are worse because they're so heavy. And you mentioned the Hillsborough County Schools, does that include the public and private schools that would abut these expressways and highways? Thank you.
All right, I think I've got all of them, but correct me if I missed something. Okay, so for the first question regarding the Selman, so the Selman Expressway was not included in the scope of the grant, but I do think that we could reach out to THEA and see if they would be interested in participating in it. I think that's a great idea. And also I will say, we'd like for this network to continue after the grant is finished. So with that, I also hope to see that it would eventually expand. So those could be future locations. And then regarding including the Department of Health, yeah, we have someone from the Department of Health who's been involved. She was at the kickoff meeting and will be attending future meetings, and she's actually included. They have an environmental department within FDOH, and so she's included them as well. So definitely great points. And regarding what's being measured, so the monitors that we're looking at, Purple Air, that measures PM, particulate matter, specifically, mainly PM 2.5 is what we're focusing on. It does capture PM 10, but our focus is on PM 2.5 because it's a criteria pollutant for the EPA, so we have a comparison for that. And then we're also looking at nitrogen dioxide and the Clarity Node S monitor that measures PM 2.5 as well as NO2. The NO2 calibrations are much more challenging than the PM 2.5. So that is still a work in progress for calibrating those. USF has been working really closely with Clarity, the vendor, and their research team.
Super. And then the only other one I had there was the schools, are private and public schools considered?
Yeah, so for the educational materials, we've really only been focusing on the Hillsborough County Public Schools. We are trying to identify private schools, so they're by no means excluded. We just haven't introduced materials to the private schools, but if there's a private school that meets the criteria and is eligible to be a site, then they're definitely they can be on the list.
Okay, Josh Frank, I see your hand up.
Yep, two very quick questions. One is I happen to know some people at LSU who are doing a similar study with the Claiborne Expressway, including the principal of that study with their College of Health. So I'd be happy to make the connection as a peer study. That might be very interesting.
Thank you.
And the second question is, I think we have at least 2 board members that live within your criteria zone of I-275, including myself. I'm about 1,900 feet from 275. Would I be able to volunteer? How would I go about volunteering as a potential community location?
So right now, we're really only focused on the on like community organizations and locations with a public space rather than individuals' homes, for being able to receive a monitor that's funded by the grant. That being said, if you're interested, you can get a monitor. The Purple Airs are about like $300. The Clarities are significantly more, but still relatively low cost air quality monitors. And then you can also receive technical guidance from USF and still be included in the network.
Awesome. And we have a neighborhood park as well that might be available if that's
okay.
preferable. So if you could reach out potentially to the Old Seminole Heights Neighborhood Association, that'd be great.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Okay, Josh, thank you. Anybody else virtually?
Dana's.
Is there anybody else virtually? Another hands up? Okay, Dana?
Thank you. I heard just through the grapevine, not through an authorized source, that the pilot study had sort of like inconclusive results in terms of like, there was an air quality monitor right next to the highway near my house. And I didn't actually see it on the map, but it's at the Mount Zion Church on Columbus and 26th. Anyways, and I asked about that one, and this person said that it didn't show that there was elevated like toxins in the air, that it wasn't they suggested that there was something to do with the wind or some other elements. So my question is, what are the variables that are being looked at as part of the study in terms of like wind speed and direction, heat island? So not just like, or I don't know, like traffic, congestion, things like that.
Yeah, I think so. Regarding the results of the pilot study, so the data analysis that was collected and compared across all of the different sites, we were only able to get a comparison between the different sites for a period of about 3 months. because the sites were installed at different phases. So there is a very short period of time where we were able to actually compare the sites. The data, USF did conduct data analysis over a much longer period of time for the sites that were established, let's say in early 2022. And so they were able to see the results from that. The results kind of indicated that, so at the, I'm going to go back actually to here. So this is this green dot, that's the EPC Monroe site. So that's the regulatory site. That site actually had, based on when they compared over the 2 or 3 month period, this site had the highest concentration values over a 24-hour period. And then there were 3 different sites that were located at parks, at Perry Harvey, at Robles Park, and at Sulphur Springs Parks. And those actually had the lowest concentration values over a 24-hour average. And then New Mount Zion, Tampa Heights Junior Civic Association, Seminole Elementary School, and Robert J. Saunders Library, those ones had higher concentration values, but they did not reach the same level as EPC. All of those values were within the EPA like limits for the 24-hour period. So they're not exceeding EPA levels. So what we're trying to do is see, are there differences between locations, and are there disparities based on like geographically? So that, I think that kind of answers the first part of it. But let me know if you have further questions on that. And then the second question was related to what are the other variables. Right now, we don't have a mechanism out there that's looking at wind speed. Right, USF has looked at using the data from the EPC sites on the wind, but there can be variations across all of these locations. So they're currently looking at different ways to put up the sensors for the wind and temperature and relative humidity, but right now we don't have those up.
So what are the variables that are included? Do you have like a quick list?
So that would be the particulate matter, PM 2.5 and NO2.
Okay. All right.
Ilya?
I have a quick follow-up comment about what Christina said about the Selman Expressway. That might also be interesting to look at because there's a freight railroad also running along that, which I'm sure pollutes a little bit as well. It's not too busy. And then along with the thing about the freight rail, I noticed, I guess, the majority of the communities are around the highways, but you know, maybe also looking at some of the communities near closer to the bay where the industrial regions are, where there's a lot of freight rail, seeing how all that pollution, how much it pollutes.
I'm sorry, was there something else?
No, that was it. Sorry.
Okay. Yeah, I think, so we are working within the scope of the grant, and so we can't really veer outside of that. I do think that that is a fantastic suggestion, and definitely something to look at in the future. Right now, we do have to prioritize the locations along the interstates are kind of the way that we're including other areas is through the ways we're people can purchase the monitors and still participate, even if they're outside of that scope.
Thank you.
Okay, Lizzie, I'm not seeing any other hands up. I appreciate it. That was a nice report. Very good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that finishes our status reports. We're into unfinished business and new business. Sarah, you said you had something you wanted to address.
Yeah, I'll be very brief. I know the last meeting, the infographic was brought up. Our staff is working on that and we hope to bring it to you shortly. I saw a draft of it earlier this week and it's progressing nicely. We're also keeping an eye on bringing you the presentation on those plans that are core documents along with the comprehensive plans and their relationship. The Tampa Bay Partnership, State of the Region, I've been in contact with them and we tentatively have something scheduled this summer, so stay tuned. The Upper Tampa Bay Trail closure is included as an addendum about a news article on that. But if anyone wants more detail or presentation, please let me know and we can get that scheduled. And then we are in communication with Brightline and hope to bring a presentation to the TPO board and we will certainly bring one to you as soon as we can get something free.
Okay, cool. Thank you. Next CAC meeting is May the 1st. We're into member interest and future topic requests. Do you have any other bright ideas for future topic requests? Matt Sink.
I would like to see if there'd be a possibility of having a more in-depth discussion on what's going on with the streetcar system. I know that it gets talked about here and there, but like a full rounded discussion on where it is, why it hasn't happened, and what the path forward looks like.
Okay, any other member interest?
She mentioned the comp plan presentation.
Online, any member interest? You want to put on the list? No? Okay. Well, for better or worse, that takes us to adjournment and we're just a little bit ahead of schedule. So thank you very much. Absent any objection, we're adjourned.
This is a good one for you.